Welcome to the Wise Take DFS Podcast. I am your host, CK013. You can find me on Twitter at CK_013. And I'm joined once again by one of my right-hand men, one of the OGs of Wise Take. We got Paulie D, a.k.a. Paulie Ds. You can find him on Twitter at Paulie D. That's 8 D's. Paulie, how we doing tonight, bro?
Doing good, man. Doing really good. I actually winning some baseball for once in a long time.
Feels good, doesn't it?
It does. It's like, wow, I can still do this. Nice. Awesome.
Yeah.
But really, I'm just pumped to talk about football.
Yeah.
Just like, I love it. I'm so obsessed.
Oh, yeah, man. Football is definitely here, and I gotta say, before we even move on there, the Y stream today, I think we hit it pretty good. I think, man, the Phillies push at the end, I think was, you know what I'm saying? I think it was a solid stream, and as Cam said, it was a very productive stream.
Yeah,
I think that was Cam who said that, right?
I pretty much opened the show with "Don't play Max Scherzer," not even in cash, and that held true. And yeah. Chris Hoskins, we both wanted him as our guy.
That was
it. Did good. Yeah, we did good. We did real good. I hope we got a lot of hooty-hooing going on right now, and I hope there's a lot of owls up top.
Absolutely. I would hope the same. So this is obviously week 2, so it's only our second NFL podcast, and week 1 wasn't normally week 1. You see like a ton of scoring, and you see a ton of things. I got a wow.
Yeah, you didn't see nothing in week 1, man.
Oh, was it?
That was weird.
Oh, you're talking about how week 1 was wow. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I thought maybe something happened in the baseball.
No.
I got excited. I was like, "What's going on, Paulie?"
I'll let you know if something good happens. But
all right,
I was just talking about week 1, man. Week 1, like,
oh yeah,
big time injuries. You know, a lot of guys first pick in the draft. It's history. DJ. And, Patriots getting blown out. Packers, Seattle game scoring like less than 30 total points. There's a lot of weird stuff out there.
Yeah, there was. There was definitely a lot of weird stuff. Just in general, there was really low scoring. Usually week 1, we see a lot of high scoring because, like, offenses have had all this time to prepare. And so I think we were all expecting like a ton of shootouts and high scoring. It really wasn't. There was only like a few guys that you kind of had to have, and then other than that, it didn't really matter because everybody else scored about the same, close to nothing. So it was like, we had some strong takes that did well. Don't get me wrong. Like it was fine, but it wasn't as exciting, so to speak. Although don't get me wrong, I'm just happy football's here, so I'm not trying to knock it. But I think it wasn't.
No, it was definitely a weird week 1. You know, You had a lot of the big 2, Le'Veon Bell and DJ. One got hurt. The other, I think, got punished.
Yeah. Punished.
So, that was strange. And, we had some guys on the Bears, Tyreek Cohen, who, like, we were on, like, as, like, a deep sleeper, but not for this first game. And, like, won somebody $1 million. Just, it was just a lot of weird, funky stuff,
Oh yeah, man. I mean, we should have saw the omen though when the Kansas City Chiefs went out and beat the ass of the New England Patriots. We should have got an omen. Okay, week 1's gonna be weird, or maybe the season's gonna be weird. What was some of your biggest takeaways from week 1 going forward this year? Like just off the top of your head.
I was really impressed with Minnesota. All around defense, offense. Fantasy-wise, it's like pretty clear it's going to be Bradford to Thielen and Diggs, and maybe a little bit Rudolph, and then the rookie running back from Florida State, is clearly the number 1 guy, Cook. So, like, where to go for fantasy goodness with them. And, I was impressed. They pretty much manhandled the Saints, who were, kind of like a all-time like offensive juggernaut. It was in the dome on a turf, and they really didn't have much for the Vikings. So I was impressed with them. Obviously, the Patriots looked a little vulnerable, and I was really impressed with the Chiefs. Not just beating the Patriots, but just the way they did it. I mean, Andy Reid really dialed up a nice game plan. They were running all kinds of like misdirection gadgets, trying to get Hunt and Hill, and with the ball in space, and it really really worked well. And Alex Smith, all preseason guys were like, let's get Mahomes in there, and you kind of like shut those guys up, and just had a phenomenal game. And I think that's an interesting team going forward because they have a very good defense. What else? The Jets. Jets are terrible. The Giants. The Giants are terrible. It's gonna be a tough year for New York.
Oh yeah. That's yeah, man. I thought the same. There were a couple of things that I thought was interesting that we'll get into kind of later, but it's only week 1, so you don't want to look too deep into anything as far as like team trends, if like you see anything different. And so, like, one thing I thought was interesting is the Patriots, who are normally one of the mid to slower paced first half teams. And the reason I say first half, just for those that don't know, is like the first half is like usually the team's true intention of pace because they have their own game script in their mind, their own game plan. The second half has a lot of influence on game situation. Like if a team is up by a lot, they're more likely going to run in the second half, and they're going to go slow in the second half. Whereas if a team's trailing, they're going to go faster. So I like to look at the first half pace stats to determine who is actually, intentionally going fastest. And the Patriots were like, I think, third according to Football Outsiders. I was a little surprised. It's uncharacteristic to see them that high. Mm-hmm. So obviously that brings me into the slate we have coming for week 2. We have a lot of top guys, man. A lot of top quarterbacks to talk about. We have no DJ to talk about. Yep. So it's pretty much the only top option that we have this week is Bell. And then it's pretty much, man, like, you got to pick your guy from there. So if you even want Bell, because you really can't, you don't know. You don't know. He might still be on punishment or whatever it is. But he really didn't play much, man. Whatever happened to him. So you ready to dive in, man?
Yeah, let's do it, man.
All right, let's go. I'm going to pull up the old screen share there so that they can see the salaries with us. So, obviously, those of you guys, this is our website, wisetake.com. It's a premium DFS community. We have NFL projections. We do multiple sports, NFL, MLB, NBA. We have MMA stuff going up there. We have some NASCAR stuff going up there. We got plain sound effects just going off. It's just, we got it all. We got it all.
They're trying to watch me. They send the over every so often.
This is the fantasy gods. They're like, nah, Paulie, what's going on, bro? It's baseball. And you're winning right now. Yeah, so head over to wisetake.com. Like I said, we got premium chat. We got you get the live streams where we go a little bit deeper. Those will be on Saturdays at approximately 2 p.m. Eastern. And we get articles, man. Patio Joe writing the cash game articles. We got Slim Gady on the narrative articles. We got our man Camden giving us game-by-game breakdowns. He just started for us. And obviously, you'll get Paulie D's GPP articles for DraftKings, mine for FanDuel. We have a ton of football content, projections, stat sheets, you name it. Head over to wisetake.com and go ahead and sign up. Use promo code Twitter or Facebook, either one. You save 10% on whichever plan that you want. And that's wisetake.com. But anyway, Paulie, we're going to start off here and talk about some of these quarterbacks. And I got FanDuel and DraftKings both pulled up here. So I know you're more of primarily a DraftKings guy, so I'm going to switch over to DraftKings. And I just want to, like, before I'm only going to ask you about a few of these guys, and we're going to go because we can't just spend 2 hours like last week. But we got Tom Brady, Drew Brees, Matt Ryan, Aaron Rodgers, Derek Carr, Russell Wilson. It just seems like it's not just Tom Brady. It's Tom Brady against the Saints. It's not just Matt Ryan. It's Matt Ryan against the Packers, and vice versa for Aaron Rodgers. So I'm just want to ask you a couple guys in regards to quarterback. Talk to me a little bit about Tom Brady. He's the highest priced quarterback on DraftKings. I believe on FanDuel as well. And he's got a matchup against New Orleans. We just saw Sam Bradford look like Tom Brady against these New Orleans Saints. So what are your thoughts on Tom Brady?
I think he's in play, but, we saw the Vikings run and pass all over the Saints, and we did see the Patriots, give the ball out to Mike Gillislee. I think New England's going to control this game, and I think there's a potential for blowout, even though it is in New Orleans. I was not impressed with New Orleans, and so I could see a scenario where Brady has a very good game, but not like a ceiling game because Gillisley, vultures a handful of those touchdowns. But if you are going to go with him, I would probably pair him up with Gronkowski. We saw Amendola go down this week, and I'm kind of interested to see who's going to fill that slot role. There's talks of it being James White. There are talks of it being that receiver they traded from the Colts. I can't think of his name, but we don't know who's going to be playing slot, so that'll be an interesting thing. But I think Tom Brady's going to look to Old Faithful, Gronkowski, who he kind of didn't really hook up with too much in Week 1. And so if you're going to play Brady, I would pair him up with Gronk. But really, I like some of the other quarterbacks. I think there's a chance for blowout. I think there's a chance for some, running back vultures. I don't see Tom Brady having like a 400-yard, 5-touchdown pass kind of game.
Yeah, I definitely think that makes a lot of sense. I especially agree with you on the blowout part. There's definitely potential for that. Now, don't get me wrong. Like, I think the game will stay close for some portion of the game. But I know, like, I've seen the line. I'm sure you've seen it, Paulie. You and I both watched the lines very, very heavily. And New England's getting pushed up. I know the public's on them, but the public doesn't move lines that far. So there's some sharp money coming on there, and they're pushing New England. And 7 is a key number. They don't like to cross key numbers, 3 and 7. Whatever stance they take on a number on 3 and 7, if they do it under, they don't want to go back up to 3. If they do it over 3, they don't want to go under 3. So it's like, for them to get pushed all the way up to 7 at some places, they took a lot of money. So I'm definitely with you on that. I could see that being a scenario. And if that were to happen, it's not necessarily all good for Brady, like you said. We saw Gillisley got a decent workload. Brady won't have to throw as much. He'll just keep handing off. And even when he does throw, there's no pressure. They'll just dink and dunk. They'll take their time. It'll lower the opportunities. And so I think that makes a lot of sense, man. Brady will be popular, right? I mean, FanDuel, just because, right? Because he lost game 1. It's the Saints.
Yeah, so, that's why everyone's bet. Belichick doesn't lose 2 games in a row. It's only happened, twice the last 10 years or something like that. So he'll definitely be popular, but I can't see any one quarterback being mega chalk. There's just there's 6 guys that are gonna be 15% each. I can't say Brady will be 30 and these other guys 15. I think they're all gonna be in the 15s. Rodgers, Brady, Ryan.
That's a great point because I agree with you because I think because there's no DJ. And because Bell's not even a sure thing, it seems. Yeah. People are going to have all this extra money to play with because they're not paying those. You know what I'm saying? They're going to have all this extra money to play with. They're going to pay up a quarterback. That's going to be – it's not – like you said, it's not going to be Brady or Rodgers or Brees specifically who might be the super mega chalk or whatever. It's going to be paying up at that tier that's going to be the chalk option, right?
Exactly.
Gotcha, brother. All right, I'm going to ask you another one of these guys. Talk to me about Matt Ryan. So we saw Week 1, Chicago. They actually played pretty well defensively against them. And, Freeman still had a ton of involvement. That's the thing about the Falcons, I find, though, is that they have so many weapons offensively that sometimes it doesn't always mean that Ryan's going to be the guy that gets you the points you need. Although it is the Green Bay Packers, and we know last year, I think Green Bay had the 31st ranked passing defense in the league, and Atlanta tore them up. So what's your thoughts here on Rodgers? I'm sorry, Matt Ryan.
So I don't really like Ryan either. I just think that, I see Freeman being the focal point of this game unless Green Bay jumps out to a lead. But the game's in Atlanta, and, I kind of expect the Falcons to be playing from the lead or 7-7, 14-7, 14-14, kind of going back and forth. So I think they'll lean on Freeman and, not have to unload Matt Ryan. Only circumstance that I see that, changing is if Green Bay jumps out to a big lead and they have to play from behind. Right now they're favored by about 2.5, I think. And, Green Bay's defense is just terrible. So, from the run, from the pass, there's definitely going to be opportunity here. But, I would have small shares of Ryan, like building a lot of teams. And I think I'd probably play him naked if I was going to go with Ryan. I don't think I'd pair him up with anybody. I know Julio's going to be really popular here, but he's super expensive, and we just haven't seen him get the attention that he deserves, and I almost see Ryan spreading it out like he always does, Hooper and Gabriel and the backside of the backfield. So, if you're going to go Ryan, I think the play would be to play him naked and just, hope he goes for 405 touchdowns and spreads it around. But I expect the Falcons to kind of use the run game. They did it with the Bears. They really didn't open up the pass game all that much. They stuck to the ground, and I think that's going to hold true in this game as well. So I'm not really interested in Ryan either.
I think it makes a lot of sense. He's attractive on FanDuel. I think he's going to be slightly more popular just because he is cheaper than some of the other guys like Rodgers, Breeze, even Carr. He's 8,200 on FanDuel, so. I wouldn't be surprised to see him get a little bit more attention there, and I get it. 8,200 is a pretty good bargain. And
what's Brady on
he's 9-1. I'm sorry, no, he's 9-2. So he's 9-2. Rodgers is 9-1. Breeze is 8-7, and Matt Ryan's 8-2.
Uh-huh.
So you know what I'm saying? Because he's that cheap, I could see it, and it makes it a lot easier without DJ and Bell. It makes it very easy to pair Julio Jones and Matt Ryan together.
Yeah, and definitely. I think that's going to be popular. If you go back, the last 3 Falcons Green Bay games have been these massive shootouts, and one of them, Julio had a monster. 10 catches, 200 yards. So people are going to see that, have the money, and go after the best play. And I think a lot of people still remember that 300-yard, 3-touchdown game that Julio had, and hope to catch that. But I'm not really on that train, but I understand it. With that discount on FanDuel, I could see Ryan getting a little more ownership there than DraftKings.
Yeah, no, exactly. And that's the thing that it's the same thing you were just saying. My concern with Atlanta in general is that they have so many weapons. It's not just it's not just Matt Ryan and Julio Jones. Sanu is healthy. He's somebody I mentioned, and Sanu actually, I think he led the team in targets last week. And so that Julio Jones, I think, only had 5 or 6 targets. It was something small. He really didn't get a lot of targets. And I think, if you think about it, last year, Sanu had a separated shoulder. It was kind of an option that was out. You know what I'm saying? So I think that just him being back, I think it's going to affect. Listen, Julio is going to get his targets at the end of the year. He'll have his targets. But there's obviously they're making it a point to spread the ball out and get attention off of him a little bit. They have Freeman. They have Coleman. Taylor Gabriel, as you mentioned. So there's just so many weapons that it could be tough to pinpoint, And
the Bears doubled Julio a lot, and kind of forced them away from it.
Right, absolutely, and I could definitely see that being an option for Green Bay. The 31st, that they know they have a crappy pass. They know it's not a secret. It's not a surprise. They know that. Let's see. Another guy I want to ask you about. I'm going to go away from that game, even though I'm sure we could spend the whole show talking about Breeze and Rodgers and all those guys too. I wanted to ask you about Ben Roethlisberger. So he's 6'7", and on DraftKings, and on FanDuel, let's see, he's $8K on FanDuel. So he's even cheaper. He's still cheaper than Matt Ryan. We know about his notorious home and road splits. Everybody talks about it all the time. Antonio Brown coming off a big game despite not getting a touchdown. Le'Veon Bell is another guy where we had question marks. We don't know how much he's going to play. He kind of he didn't do shit in his last game and burned the world. What's your approach on Ben Roethlisberger?
I don't see it. Xavier Rhodes is probably a top 3 cornerback, and he'll be matching up with Brown, most likely shadowing him. And I expect this to be a Le'Veon Bell show. I think, it was like a punishment / he wasn't in shape fully, didn't practice. But I think this week they get right back to that, and they're going to need him. Minnesota's a good defense. I think this game will be a little bit lower scoring than people think. And, if you go back and watch their games last year, there was just get Le'Veon on the ball any which way possible. Screens, runs, sweeps. especially with taking out Brown, I think it's going to be, all the Le'Veon you can handle. I don't mind if you play Ben to pair him up with Martavis Bryant. Again, like we saw Michael Thomas be pretty much insignificant on the Saints, one of their best receivers, and Breeze have to check down and use some other options. I think you're kind of going to see a similar situation here. And, overall, Minnesota just has a very good defense. So I would not play Ben Roethlisberger.
Yeah, I gotcha. I'm a slightly more interested. See, I don't see a scenario like I'd like to know why they did what they did first. Like I have to look into that as to why he didn't get it. Because if it's because they're concerned about it not being in shape or injury, then I don't see what's going to change in a week. This dude missed like over a month of team workouts, team conditioning. So if it was more of a punishment, then I'm all for it because they're not going to punish him that much. They want to win. They almost lost to the Browns. Like you know what I'm saying? Like they want to win. But if it was more of like, okay, we're concerned because the playoff kind of thing, then that's a different story to me because I don't see how they'll just if they're taking that approach, I don't see why they would just throw him out there. But then again, they're playing Minnesota, right? They did just that's the other thing. Minnesota's defense is I think it's actually decent. Like I know Breeze
really
home and road splits,
really
but like
good.
Yeah, they're pretty good. So I'm with you there, man. I'm going to ask you about one more guy. I'm going to ask you about Jameis Winston of Tampa Bay. The reason I'm going to ask you about him is because he gets that same Chicago defense that I think nobody really expected to be that great. We know Matt Ryan, the whole Atlanta offense was very popular on specifically Julio and Matt Ryan on week 1. So we got Jameis Winston. He got a bye the first week. He didn't have to play. And now here we are. His first game is going to be at home against Chicago. Do you believe in that Chicago defense or do you believe in Jameis?
Yeah, I like Jameis here. Chicago's on the road. They're definitely much tougher at home. I think there's a little bit to like week 1 rustiness kind of stuff that maybe took part on the Atlanta side, but I'm not impressed with Chicago's defense. Their front seven is really just decent at best, and their secondary is just nothing special. So I think Winston has a ton of weapons. They're, had almost 2 weeks now to prepare for this game when the first game got canceled. They're at home, and I expect, if it's not Deshaun Jackson because they're doubling Mike Evans, then Cameron Brake can get involved. But I like Winston here. The tailback, what's his name? I'm so bad with like names on the spot. Who's the tailback? Jacquizz Rodgers. He's pretty solid, but he really didn't find the end zone much last year. So I think there's potential for Jameis, to get 3-4 touchdown passes and a whole bunch of yards. And if they do the same thing and double Evans like they doubled Julio, I think Deshaun Jackson will have a monster day.
Yeah, man. I could totally get behind that. We're going to move over to running backs now, Paulie. I'm going to ask you about a couple guys. We know David Johnson being out is huge, especially because DraftKings was going to have him at 10K. So that was, that would have been difficult. But hey, Le'Veon Bell is 9'8", so he's not too far off. Talk to me about the man Le'Veon Bell. It's obviously it's a hot topic guy. Everybody's going to want to know, should they go back to him or should they stay away? It sounds like you're on more so play him, but at 9'8", are you going to play him just because you think you will be because there isn't a second guy to pay up for, or what's your stance here on Bell?
Well, that's opinion based. That I think he'll be fine and they'll go back to him. I agree with what you said. I got to find out why and what the reasoning is. And I think we will get that information. This day and age, there's just not, much the media doesn't get their hands on, especially something this hot of a topic. But my expectations was, it just wasn't a part of that week's preparation and, missed a lot of practice. But, these guys want to win. They're not going to punish him that much longer. And he's had another week to get in shape. And I think this game kind of puts the ball in his hand a lot more. I think Minnesota's going to be a tough test for them. I think Antonio Brown's going to be held down just a bit, and I think he's just going to get a ton of touches And, unless we hear something else, I'll probably be targeting him because I think the ownership might be a little lower than it should be. I think guys are shell-shocked from week one, and, it's pretty high tag, and there's a lot of, attractive, expensive quarterback receiver combinations. So, like, I could see Bell kind of being lower owned than he should. And, there's a handful of, like, cheaper quarterback receiver combos that I like. And I just think it's going to be like a contrarian approach this weekend is paying up at running back, where guys are probably going to be doing the opposite.
That brings me to the next guy I want to ask you about. Looks like DraftKings didn't adjust for the price and workload, but then again, he hasn't really done too much, so I guess we don't know what to have, what we have here. But gotta ask you about Kerwin Williams, the backup of David Johnson. He's 4,800 on FanDuel, and I think on DraftKings, and I think I think he's actually more expensive on like almost like FanDuel tried to price him up, so he's like 6-1 on FanDuel. So maybe that's because of the matchup, I guess, but. Kerwin Williams, 4.8. I have a feeling that this guy is going to make a lot of cash game articles across the industry. I wouldn't be surprised to see him in Joe's, at least for the DraftKings portion. On FanDuel, maybe it's something you could debate, but on DraftKings with a flex available, it almost seems like you kind of have to play him. This almost seems like a Carlos Hyde situation to me, considering the opponent and the workload. What are your thoughts on Kerwin Williams?
So they announced today that he's going to be the number one. I think this backfield goes into like a committee approach until somebody emerges. I actually like the other back a little bit better in terms of I think he's more talented and will emerge as the starter. I don't really know much about Kerwin Williams. I'm going to have to take a little deep dive into him. One of NFL DFS 101s is, if there's a cheap, backup running back that's going to get the usage, you play him, So he's definitely going to be attractive, but to me, it feels like a trap right now. I could really see that busting or him just not getting the full load that people expect. And, it's interesting, the Colts definitely are not impressive, but Arizona's definitely going to be reeling from this, and I'll have to get back to you on that, but it's definitely an attractive price. There's other backs down here, clearly this guy's not as talented as DJ, so it's I don't know, what's a good example? If Le'Veon Bell got hurt, are you just starting Foster if he's 5K the next week, not knowing, what his role is, what he's not Foster, but the rookie out of Pittsburgh, can't think of his name. You know what I mean? It's an unknown. I don't think it's as automatic as people may think.
I think a lot of it has to do with the pricing, of course.
Yeah.
In cash games, you're playing the guy. That's the bottom line. In cash games, you're playing the guy. Every bit matters, so price is everything in cash games. That's every edge you get. So in cash games, it's not a brainer. The question is, and Paulie, you're obviously you're a tournament guy, so it's that's the question that I think that Paulie's facing is, what do you do in tournaments? Do you make the pivot, or is he going to be the guy that's owned maybe by 30% of the field? But he's the guy you have to have. Because we talk about chalk, but remember, there's good chalk and bad chalk. If the chalk goes off, for instance, Ertz, I would say that's good chalk. He did pretty well. Maybe I think Hooper had a pretty big game too, but Ertz, he did his job for his price. I don't know, there's no way you played Ertz, and if you played Ertz, you didn't lose because you played Ertz. You know what I'm saying? So
there's a couple running backs down here, Jacquizz Rodgers is 4,400. Javorius Allen, who got 20 carries, is 4,100.
I think when you consider the matchup and you consider the game script here, that's why he's a must play in cash to me. It's the game script. You would expect the Colts to have a hard time because there's nothing wrong with Arizona's defense. You know what I mean? I know that Stafford kind of tore him up, but number one, Stafford was home where he does typically play better, and number two, the offense had a hard time getting going. So the defense was just on the field a lot. Stafford didn't do shit till the second half. Like, it wasn't until like towards the end of the game that he started doing his thing. So like for me, like I'm talking cash games, of course. Like it's just a matter of at that price, you have to assume his workload is going to be worth more than that regardless. And then you consider in the matchup against the Colts. You know what I'm saying? Like he should see work. Like I agree with you. Like if you wanted to get a little crazy and just say, hey, you know what, this number 2 guy is going to get a lot of run too and play him. That's fine too. But that's the reason to me that it's different for him. It's because like it's the matchup, the game score, like everything kind of lines up. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, we have to know that he's going to get the bulk of the work. Like, if it's going to be a timeshare, I don't know. You know?
Yeah. Oh, no,
like, no one's heard
absolutely.
Before today. Like, is he good? Like, does he? Like,
well,
you know what I mean?
Well, everybody knows who he was last week when he vultured David Johnson's touchdown. That was this guy, Mr. Kerwin Williams. Definitely. Listen, all we know is it says right here on the DraftKings thing, it says head coach Bruce Arians termed Kerwin Williams the starting running back for Sunday. We don't know what that means. You know, it says that Arian has already described Williams as the featured back. You know, but like if he doesn't do well, that could change very quickly. So like to me in cash games, do it because I think everybody else will. You know what I'm saying? In cash games, I think everybody else is going to do it. You got to do it, keep up with the pack. If you don't do it and he goes off and you don't have this guy at 4,800 and the guy you went with at that price didn't do well, then you're behind a large portion of the field. In tournaments, it's up for debate 100% because there's nobody that you know what I'm saying? Like if you know 30 or 40% of the field is going to be on a guy, like even a guy like Zach Ertz, you didn't have to play Zach Ertz. You could have played other tight ends at that. Austin Hooper was how much? And like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you know, like, so like that's the thing about it. It's just getting the pivot right, you know?
Sure.
Unless the guy busts. But, all right, let's see. Another guy I wanted to ask you about is Mr. Todd Gurley. So Todd Gurley is 6'8" on DraftKings. He has a matchup with Washington, who last year their rushing defense was absolutely terrible last year. But then we saw this year with Blunt. Blunt actually had a decent game against him. He didn't do all that bad. Now Wentz had the big game, but Blunt didn't do all that bad against him. What are your thoughts here on Todd Gurley?
He's in play for sure. You know, who's favored in this game? Rams favored here. They're at home. You know, I thought Gurley kind of disappointed last week. Like, I know he kind of got there. He got like the touchdown. I'm not sure how many yards he got. You know, ran out of power, so it wasn't like fully like abreast of all the NFL. I was kind of just following on my phone. But you know, I like thought he should have had like 150 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns against how bad that Colts defense is. So, you know, a little tougher matchup here. Redskins could theoretically, you know, be playing from the lead in this game. I don't know. I think he's fine, and I think he'll be popular, but I don't know if that's like a must play.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you on that. I think this level, this tier is kind of where things kind of get wide open. We even have a Ajayi against the Chargers. Not saying I'm interested, but it's definitely wide open. Speaking of which, the last guy before we move on to wide receivers is Kareem Hunt. Are you believing the hype with Kareem Hunt? He's obviously, I mean, I'm not saying he's not a good player, but do you think this is a good spot for him coming off of the game he came off, you know, ownership considered and everything else?
Yeah, I mean, obviously he's not going to have a 50-point game like last week, but definitely going to be the focal point and have a ton of opportunity. Got to dig in to see how Philly does against premier backs, but you know, at that price and with whatever's surrounding him, he's definitely appealing. You know, I could see him getting a ton of opportunity.
Oh yeah, definitely. I definitely think he's somebody that you'll see in a lot of cash games, etc. Just because, again, you know, you can't expect the guy to put up 50 every night, but when the guy does that his first game against the Patriots and.
You know, the targets. You know, it wasn't just like carries.
He was. He's a part of it. He's a full part of their game plan. He seemed like he was a full part. 5 targets, 5 receptions, 98 yards receiving. That's a good point. All right, let's move on over to wide receiver here. This is another place. Antonio Brown was a guy that a lot of winning lineups had him as the receiver. He didn't. I don't even think he got a touchdown, did he? But he just had a crap ton of receptions.
Like 11 catches, like 180 yards.
Yeah, he just had exactly, and that's what Antonio Brown does. Except usually he gets touchdowns. Then we got Julio Jones right under him. Julio Jones was disappointment. Only had like 5 targets, I think, or something like that, and not Julio Jones-esque. We got Brandon Cooks returning home. Well, not home, but visiting his old team, the New Orleans Saints. Jordy Nelson against Atlanta. We got Mike Evans. Michael Thomas coming off a bad game. Michael Crabtree against my Jets. I'm going to start off and talk to you about Antonio Brown first. We mentioned him a little bit before, and it sounds like for you, Bell is somebody that's on your mind. What about Brown? Would you play Brown and Bell together? Is that something that you would do in the right matchup?
In the right matchup, absolutely, but not this week. Xavier Rhodes, one of the top corners in the league, is probably going to be shadowing him. And, I have to look for matchups, and this is not a good one. I'm not going to pay top dollar for a guy that, last year Xavier Rhodes essentially shut down every guy he went up against. Could Antonio Brown do all right? Yeah. But extremely unlikely as a ceiling game. More than likely the other receivers benefit from, him taking away one half of the field.
Gotcha. All right, let's talk about Cooks a little bit here. So Cooks against New England is going to be somebody that a lot of people look at as 8-2 on DraftKings. Not sure what he is on FanDuel. I'm going to pull it up real quick. 7-9 it looks like. So what are your thoughts on Cooks going home against the Saints? Now, I remember last year he got frustrated when Michael Thomas kind of took over as the guy. He voiced his opinion, and he was very upset about it, and that's why he got traded. So talk to me about Cooks.
I think it's going to be more popular than it should, and ownership's just going to dictate that this is a fade. It could be a fade that you regret. He could certainly have a monster game, but pretty sure New Orleans is going to pay attention to him. I don't think they're going to want to get embarrassed by their old player. I think if anything they'd rather it be somebody else. With all the injuries now to that receiver core, you kind of can focus on him and say, these other guys got to beat us. So I'm probably not going to go there. Would he have a monster game? Sure, but I don't think he will. I like the other targets on the Patriots, and I think New Orleans will definitely be game planning against them.
Yeah, it's almost like, okay, we know we're going to get beat, but we don't want to get beat by that guy.
Yeah.
Whatever happens, we don't want that guy to be the one to beat us. What are your thoughts on Mike Evans? Last year, just a target monster. This year, you mentioned he's got a bunch of weapons out there. It sounds like you're a little optimistic on Winston. What are your thoughts on Evans? Are we big on Evans, or do we think that he has too many weapons and he's not going to be as sharp of a play?
No, he's definitely going to be a great play. Maybe not this week, just because we saw Chicago double team Julio. They might do the same thing here. It makes a lot of sense. So, if teams are going to dedicate 2 guys to one player, you just, you go to the other guys. But Mike Evans is a huge, talented receiver with a great relationship with Winston, and I don't see that really declining too much. Maybe a handful less touchdowns or targets, just because last year he was literally the only option at some point. Cameron Brate was hurt for a part of the year, and once Vincent Jackson went down, there was just no other targets. Now they have a rookie tight end and Deshaun Jackson. So, but I think he'll get more quality. I think, that teams won't be able to double team him once Jackson establishes himself, and he'll get some single coverage where it used to be double coverage, and I think he's going to do just fine. He's a monster. He's going to get a lot of, fades, red zone targets, and I expect similar numbers to last year.
Gotcha. I'm with it, man. Let's see. Another guy I wanted to ask you about. I wanted to ask you about Michael Thomas. So Michael Thomas is the reason Cooks isn't there. So it's a nice little narrative build. It's one of the reasons I wanted to ask you about him. And so him and Drew Brees' entire Saints team, they had a very underwhelming, we'll just say that to be nice, an underwhelming week 1. They didn't look very good at all. I think he got 8 targets or something like that, Thomas. So like it almost seems like it's kind of he's off to a start where less than he was off last year. Like it just didn't seem right. The whole offense in sync. And on top of that, the Saints' pace was even slower in the first half.
Xavier Rhodes.
What's that?
Xavier Rhodes guarded him. That's why he didn't have a good game.
Okay, so
same reason we're not on Antonio Brown. But Belichick could game plan against Thomas too. You know, like he's their best receiver. Probably the only weapon that you know, if he had a monster game that could threaten New England. So, you know, I think Michael Thomas is going to be fine. I think he'll definitely have a better game here because New England doesn't have the D-backs that Minnesota has. And, you know, and if I was playing Breeze, I'd pair him up with Thomas for sure.
I like it, man. I like it. Last guy, and then we're going to move on to the tight ends here. T.Y. Hilton, he's got nobody throwing it to him, but he's 5'3".
Kobe Brissett, man.
Brissett might get the start. That's right. They haven't announced it yet, but they said that they're making a decision, though.
Yeah, I think he's going to get it. I mean, I thought it was announced. It might not have been, like, officially announced, but he was taking, like, the first string, like, the plays in practice. I think Hilton's actually kind of interesting here. You know, like, I don't know what to expect from Brissett, but, you know, when you're a new guy on a team and you get thrown into this role, you're going to, like, hone in on the best guy out there, and that's T.Y. So, you know, I could see, you know, them trailing and trying to come back and throwing a lot and, like, you know, just, like, the volume just paying off on a guy like T.Y. You know, like, you can get 14 targets, 10 catches, a touchdown. And T.Y. can break plays. You know, he can go the distance on a screen. He can, you know, he's a good runner after the catch. So I think he's kind of interesting. You know, like he's definitely going to be extremely low owned. And, you know, like on, you know, DraftKings where it's point per reception, like, you know, I think he's got a really, really high floor, you know.
Yeah, I think if Brissett plays, I wouldn't do. I don't know if I would do it if Tolson plays, just because Arizona's defense, they still got Peterson, like they're still respectable. But if Brissett's more of a playmaker, so we could see like maybe a couple scrambles, and T.Y. Hilton can, you know, he could do his thing a little bit more and have a little bit more time to get open. I think I'm with you, man. Especially on a PPR site like DraftKings, only 5,300. It's cheap, man. This is a star, you know.
And I think T.Y. runs a bunch of his routes out of the slot. They have Moncrief out wide, so we might not get Peterson.
Right. Absolutely, man. All right, let's move over to tight end. Let's talk about some of these guys that we have here. So we heard word that Jordan Reed was playing with like a broken toe, and he really didn't have a very good, like he's playing, but he didn't really have a very good first week, and his price is significantly down. Looks like he's only 5'2" on DraftKings. I'm pretty sure he was higher than that before. And so I guess because maybe it's just a response, like an overreaction to the broken toe news that we all found out on Sunday that was supposedly secret or whatever. Talk to me about Jordan Reed against the Rams.
Yeah, you know, I don't like toe injuries. Weird how it was like undisclosed. He wasn't on the injury report. Not sure if it was like an off-field injury that, you know, really the team didn't know about, or if they were trying to conceal the fact that he was hurt. But definitely don't like foot injury. And, you know, against a top defense like the Rams, I'm unlikely to go there. You know, the Redskins have a handful of targets. I don't see them like forcing to Reed if they don't need to. If he's a couple steps slower, you know, then you lose all the advantage you have in his talent. So I'm probably not going to go there until I see that he's healthy.
I'm with it, man. Looks like there's a couple things to note. Looks like Zach Ertz, his price is significantly raised, and they reversed it from what was he, 35 or something 35. Like that? Now it's 53. So they went ahead and reversed the numbers. I'm not going to ask you about Gronk because I think we talked about him enough in the beginning, and I think it's pretty obvious with Gronk. It's the Saints who have they have a hard time stopping anybody. Yeah. So Gronk is always a solid play. But I do want to ask you a little bit about Greg Olsen. He's the next guy under Gronk. He's a guy that Cam Newton has kind of relied on a lot in the past. And so, you know, week one, he kind of went under the radar and nobody really paid any attention to him. And so now he gets a matchup with Buffalo, who I think that people may like forget how bad their defense actually is. Because they played the Jets. They played such a bad offense in week 1. What are your thoughts on Greg Olsen this week?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just like he'll have a handful of big games, but I don't think he's the first option anymore. I think this team's got a ton, with Christian McCaffrey, they just have this crazy dynamic weapon. Maybe didn't get the usage in week 1 that I thought, but it's going to evolve over the year, and it's going to decrease Greg Olsen's usage and everyone else's as he becomes the focal point of that team. And, I don't know, like he should have had a bigger game against San Fran. I don't think Buffalo's any different in terms of defense. And could he have a good game? Sure, but I think Olsen's going to be a guy you take in the closer games. A game where you can see Carolina winning kind of handily. I don't think he's a guy you want to pay up for.
I gotcha. All right, there's 2 more guys I'm going to ask you about. First guy, Austin Hooper, 3,500 on DraftKings. He had probably, as far as the fantasy world goes, probably one of the games of his life. What are your thoughts on Austin Hooper?
It was one play. He had a 84-yard reception where he broke loose, took it to the house. He only had 2 catches.
He had 2 catches for 2 touchdowns.
2 targets, 1 touchdown.
1 touchdown. Yeah. That was exactly my point. I bring him up because I think that they're going to want action in that primetime game. People like to play the primetime game. So I bring him up because people are going to look at his price. They're going to say, oh, look, DraftKings didn't adjust this guy's price. He's only $3,500. The guy had 2 targets. He was never meant to be a part of that offensive game plan. So that's one thing I wanted to put out there on the show tonight. Definitely, I mean, listen, I guess you can get lucky and have another play. He had 2 targets. In a game where Matt Ryan was struggling on offense, he still only had 2 targets. Yeah. So that should tell you, don't play the guy. Anyway, the only other guy I wanted to ask you about, who I think is on the opposite end of the spectrum, is Jesse James, Pittsburgh Steelers tight end. Last year we saw him, and I think it was, who was it? Green, was it? They were going back and forth, kind of splitting time. Ladarius Green. So it was kind of tough to put your finger on which one of these guys. Now it seems like Jesse James is just the guy. What are your thoughts on Jesse James, 3,200 on DraftKings, against Minnesota, though?
I think that was an outlier kind of game. I'd be shocked to see Jesse James get 8 targets. They did trade for Vance McDonald right at the end of the preseason, so I think he'll emerge as the receiving tight end, and James will kind of remain in his role as the blocking tight end. I think he just kind of like Roethlisberger likes to check down to the tight end, so with Vance getting there too late, I think he just was on the field the whole time and kind of lucked his way into 8 targets, 6 catches, and the touchdowns. But I don't see that repeating. He's been around for a while. He's never been a guy that gets a lot of targets, so he's a guy I wouldn't go after. And I think the Vikings are a top 5 team against the tight end anyway, so probably not a spot I would go.
All right, finally, we're going to talk about defenses, and then we're going to pretty much wrap this up and get out of here. So we got the Cardinals defense against Indianapolis. They're priced up. Seattle hosting San Francisco. We got Baltimore hosting Cleveland. Carolina, Buffalo. We got the Raiders and the Jets, which we saw the Bills were a little popular. The Jacksonville Jaguars, 3,100, it looks like, on DraftKings. They have a matchup with Mariota. They're coming off a phenomenal game. What's your take? So I'm going to start off. We're going to skip over the Cardinals. I think that's kind of obvious. Paying up at defense is, it's the Colts who are struggling. One of the teams I'd like to ask you about, the Raiders. The Raiders against the Jets, 3,500 on DraftKings. What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, I think they're definitely in play. Expect them to bring the blitz, early and often, create turnovers. You can stream defenses against the Jets this year, and Oakland at home, absolutely.
With it, talk to me about Jacksonville. And a quick shout out to Josh. I mean, I had 100% Jacksonville over the weekend, and I did like Jacksonville going in because I felt like the value was great on FanDuel. It was kind of an obvious FanDuel play because of the value. But Josh was really big, and he was hyping up the actual defense, talking about how they've really upgraded their players. I'm referring to Cash and DFS, of course, and all that. So tell me about the Jags here against Mariota. They are home.
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely a top 5 defense this year. Tons of speed. Probably the best cornerback tandem in the league. And, they're going to be good this year. I do think that last week had a little bit to do with Tom Savage being terrible. And this week against a dual threat quarterback in Mariota, I don't know if they'll have the same kind of massive scoring upside. I think, non-fantasy wise, they're a defense to respect. I think you'll see a lot of lower scoring games with them. But I don't think I'd go there this week. I don't see the picks and the touchdowns going to come against Mariota like they did against Savage.
Yeah, I'm definitely with you. So it's like we don't necessarily think they're going to get beat up, but I think we both agree that you can't necessarily just expect another 28 points because a lot of that came from Tom Savage on the other end. Last defense I'm going to ask you about before we wrap this up. Patio Joe's Los Angeles Chargers. Joe's been hyping up the Charger defense. He claims they have one of the best cornerback duos in the in the league. They're 2,800, and they get a matchup with Jay Cutler, who is making his first start, first game this year. It's week 1 for him.
So where's San Diego? Where's this game being played? Is this in San Diego? Or
no,
whatever?
It's in yes.
In Los Angeles?
Correct.
Now that the Dolphins had time to prepare for this game, I think Jay Cutler's an upgrade over the last quarterback. I don't even remember his name. I don't think anyone will ever hear his name again. They do have a decent defense, the Chargers, probably top 8, and can make some plays. But, Cutler's a vet. Is not like Tom Savage or Jacoby Brissett. Guy knows how to play the game, and I think he's got a chance to do some nice things with this offense. I don't think, the Chargers could be fine here. There could be some sacks, but I think the Dolphins are an improving team, and I don't see Cutler, having massive picks and fumbles and turnovers. I think he's a pretty safe quarterback in terms of that kind of stuff. And, I actually think this game might get high scoring. So I don't know if I'd go Chargers defense against the Dolphins.
I don't know, man. I think I'm on the other end of that spectrum. Consider it hedge life, but I don't know. I don't know. I get your point. Don't get me wrong. I get the philosophy of that he's getting better. But one thing about the Cutler I remember was very prone to turnovers. He had a tendency of just trying to avoid hits at any and all costs, chucking the ball up in the air just to avoid going down. So to me, I could see it. The only thing that makes me lean towards maybe this game going well is if Ajayi plays well. If that dude has a good game, then that's gonna, it's gonna mean a lot. But he's got to prove to me that he's for real, because we saw him in Indianapolis and he really did nothing for a couple of years. You know what I'm saying? So I got to see a little bit more.
What do you mean we saw him in Indianapolis?
The what's his name? Oh, no. I'm sorry. I mixed up the wrong running back. I'm thinking of the wrong running back. Yeah, we're talking about Miami. I mixed up Cutler. For some reason, I was thinking that Cutler was on a... Never mind. Yeah, so to me, it comes down to if Ajayi can live up to what he did last year. That's okay. more or less what it comes down to. If he's not having a good game, I don't really trust Cutler with the receivers he has. I don't know if they fit his skill set. You know what I'm saying? So I think for me, it's I wouldn't play the Chargers in cash, obviously, but there's a lot of other ways to go there. But for tournaments, yeah,
it's possible.
I think Patio Joe might have influenced me a little bit with his. He's been hyping up the Chargers since like a month and a half ago.
I mean, we saw Denver with Semien. You think Semien's any better than Cutler? I mean, he threw for 3 touchdowns against them. He had finally one pick late in the game. There should have been a pick 6 earlier.
But you know what Joe would say, though? The altitude. The altitude. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. But, I mean, right now we got the line moving in Miami's favor here. 45 over under. That's kind of in the middle there. Like, saying we don't know yet. It could go high scoring. I expect it to be a higher scoring game than people expect. Don't have a ton of respect for the Dolphins defense. And, I think the Chargers will be able to move the ball. And I think the Dolphins will be forced to pass. And, yeah, like Cutler, he was a talent with a terrible team. He always got stuck with horrible teams and bad O-lines and bad receivers or injured receivers. The guy's got an arm, and, like last year he actually led a handful of wins with just like an awful team. Like, the guy's good. Jay Cutler's good. He might be soft, he might not care, but like he can play. And I just like, it's definitely possible. You could definitely throw picks to the house, like, absolutely. But I think there's better spots on the slate for that. Like, we got Brissett, we got, whoever's starting for the Jets, whoever's starting for the Bills. Like, there's other spots on the slate where you can take advantage of a weaker quarterback.
I got you, man. I think it makes a lot of sense, man.
Starting a rookie.
Mm-hmm.
So
I'm with you.
But
so
it's possible in tournaments, sure, not in cash.
Yes, absolutely. Definitely with you on that. All right, man. Hey, listen, that pretty much wraps up. We're not going to sit here and talk about kickers. That's something that we can talk about that on the premium stuff, because kickers is what makes it premium. But appreciate you hanging out with me tonight, Paulie.
Anytime, bro.
So those of you that aren't already members of the Wise Take community, head over to wisetake.com. There's more of this kind of stuff. We have our Wise stream on Saturday at 2 p.m. We go a lot deeper. We have a special chat on the Right On site, or you can watch the video, be in the chat at the same time. And you can ask questions on the spot. We try our best to answer everybody's questions and in detail. And it's a lot of fun. You're going to get Paulie D's article coming out within the week. Our top 5 rankings should be up by tomorrow. A lot of great stuff going on here. Tons and tons of content. If you're into NFL DFS, you definitely want to check us out. Use promo code Twitter or Facebook, one or the other, and save 10% off your package. We got season-long packages if you wanted to save some money, or if you want to ride us out month to month, you could do that. If you want to try it out, you could pay for a week if you'd like to do that. But definitely, the Wise Take community is where you want to be. If you're watching on YouTube, please click that thumbs up. That like button means a lot to us. If you're watching on Podbean, give us a follow. If you're watching on iTunes, subscribe to the channel. Give us some 5-star reviews. Bump us up those charts. And everybody that's watching live, we appreciate you. Thanks for hanging out with us, hanging out in the chat. It's always fun. I always get kind of distracted and end up reading the chat. And then I end up not being able to hear what Paulie or Patty or Joe said. And then eventually get caught up on a couple words there, but but it's still fun. It's still nice to see it up there. We like to interact with people. But anyway, guys, thanks for hanging out. So for Paulie, for myself, and the entire Wise Take Nation, as always, good luck.
Yeah.